Hello friends and welcome to We Love Code YouTube channel, and in this video we are going to implement REST API into our NGRX signals store. As you can see, we have this simple cute We Love To Do's application. As it is right now, it saves data into local storage. So when we add new item, we can see that we have added new data into our local storage. But in the last video, we have implemented backend API for this application, and in this video we are going to implement it in our front-end Angular application. So we can now proceed and look into our code. As you can see, we have opened our IDE, and now we can look a bit at our application and its architecture. So in our app folder we have To-Do folder, where we basically have our components related to our application, our model, and our NGRX signal store. And in app HTML, all the components are put together. Now we can look at our model. It's just simple interface of To-Do object which contains ID with unique string, title which is title of our item we add to our to-do list. Completed will be Boolean, obviously. Once created it will be false, but user can change it by clicking on checkbox. Then we have our data. Now we can look at our components. So we have here header component, which is self-explanatory. Then to-do related components. We can look, for example, at to-do add component, which is basically this simple template-driven form. We use a two-way of data binding by using these two types of brackets on ng model. So it means that anytime new title changes here, it will be reflected in TS file. And if we make change in TS file, it will be reflected here. We also have some events here, when the user clicks on button or presses enter, we call add to do method. And here in our TS file, we just inject to do store, and we use add to do method from to do store. We can now look quickly on to-do list template, which is where we show our data to the user. Basically, we use different signals here. Stats, we check if we have really some data. If not, we show no to-dos found. If we have, we show app to-do stats component, and also we loop and show different to-dos to the user. We allow user to toggle it, which means to change complete on true or false. And we also allow to rename our item or to remove it. Very simple. We can just click on one of these methods and we are in our TS file. We again inject to-do store. Our components are connected to our to-do store. And we will not do any changes in our components in this video, but we will change things in our to-do store. Let's go there now. And we are now in the to-do store. It is NGRX signals store. It is place of our state management, where we have our center data of our application, the data that are used among multiple components. So we have our state defined here as interface. It contains to-dos array and also filter, which basically is either all, or we just want to filter active items or the completed. Simple. Also, every NGRX signals, as you know, have to have something like initial state. So initial state will be to-dos, but we are here calling our special function load from storage, which what it does is it tries to load data from our local storage using our storage key and parse it. So we are saving right now into local storage our data, so we will not lose them when we refresh website. and it loads them or not if we are here first time, and we set filter defaultly to be on. Now we have our center place of our NGRX signals store where we call this function, and inside of it are different functions. We have here with state, which is initial state. It receives initial state, which we defined here. And we have here computed signals. We saw them previously a bit. We can click again and see how we are using them. We are using them in to-do list component. Inside there, we just access them here. So in these computed signals, basically anytime our store changes, also these filtered to-dos will be, called again, recalculated. And here we basically apply our filters on our to-dos array. Then we have also for stats, we just use it. It's useful information for the user, Then we have another function with methods, basically here we have different methods we call. For example, we saw add to do, and we are just patching our state here, it depending what we are changing. When we add new to do, of course, we will add it into our store. Removing, we are also dealing with our store here, renaming, toggling, and also setting filter, And one last information that is relevant to this video is we use another with hooks here, and inside we have access to onInit, which is a special function, basically hook. Anytime this is initialized, there will be some logic that will be called. And we use effect here, So effect here, effects basically react on changes of signals. So anytime store to-dos changes, we will just save it to our local storage. Very simple. Now in this video, what we will do, we will create a special service where we will have our methods to call our backend API. And we will also apply those methods here. So we will be able to save our data to our server and also get our data from our server. I think we can move on and start doing that. So we want to start by creating our API service. To do that, we will just use ng command, ng g for generate, s for service, and now we just add the path to our new service. It will be in to-do folder. We will create a data folder for that, and we will name it to-do API. Another thing we want to do, we want to generate environments, at least in standalone components. They are not there like defaultly, so we will just use ng g environments. Will shortly explain why. As you can see, we have Angular generated for us this environment, different files in environment folder. There, it's good to have some production or different type of environment related information. And for example, when we are calling our backend, it is usual that backend application have, for example, development environment. It will have different address. The basic URL will be different. As also for production, it will have different base URL. So we don't want in our service to have like some switcher where we will switch it. We want to make it Angular friendly, and Angular allows us to have different environments. We can now also see that it is here presupposed there is a development environment. It takes basically this file environment TS and it will replace it with development. So always you have different files here for different environments, and they will be replacing the main one. But now we can create new file, and it will be our interface. We can name it environment.model.ts, and we can just make it exactly like that. This is what we want. We want to have defined interface for environment where we have information. Is it production? Yes or no? And we have API URL. We can name it like that. And now we will go into our environments and we will implement this. We will just import here our environment interface and we will implement our information here. You can just copy it. Right now it will be easier to copy it, and we need to paste it also into the second file like that, and we will import this. And now we have our environment ready, and we can proceed and go and look at our service. Our service has been generated, and now we can start implementing our logic here. If you haven't seen previous video where we created backend API in a Nest.js framework, I will just shortly show you how our backend looks like right now. It is exposing Todo's API where we have our get method where we get all the lists we want the user edit. We also can get specific one by just adding special ID in our address. We can also post a new data. It just receives in a body special created to the object, which is basically just it contains title. It has to be minimum length 1 and so on. And we can also change some things. We use put method here from REST, and we have two parameters or two data points. First is parameter ID, which identifies what we are changing, and then we have our body where we have our changes. Of course, we can change more things, title, or whether it was completed or not. So now we also have delete method here where we can delete our data. Of course, this is very simple backend. It doesn't use some database. It just has in-memory database basically. Now we want to implement this. We want to be able to call this from our front end. We can do it right now. As you can see, we are back into our Todo API service, and now we will implement our logic here. First, we need to inject HTTP client, which is inside Angular common modules, will help us to use different methods called from REST and called our backend. Also, I will create a helper property here because we will use, address that will be the same for most of our APIs. I mean, it will have the same basic address there. So we will just save it here and use it later in different methods we will create right now. First one will be a list. We want to be able to get all the lists. We will also be able to filter them with default value will be all, and we will return observable of to-dos like that. And also we need to import it. Like that. And as AI helps me, I will explain we want to be able to create our URL, we will be calling with our method. We use base URL of our backend, which will be, as I was saying before, on different environments and will have different addresses. Angular helps us with environments like that. We will just create different build commands with different options, for example, for production and for development, and we'll use different file, in the end, and we can use then different properties and information data. So we use API URL, which will right now contain localhost 3000 port, then our to-dos string here, and at the end we will just add filter like that, and we will call this HTTP client and get method, and that's basically it. This is our first list, which will be able to get to us the list of our items, and we can now continue. So let's continue and create method, which will allow us to create new data. It will have title as a parameter, and will return observable of one to do. Again, we need to create URL, which will be called by post method this time, and will return observable to do. Now we want to create update, and to change different to change our data, to update our data, we need to have two parameters this time, ID for string, and I want to use payload, which I will explain how it works. It will use, as you can see, AI helps us, pick utility that will take to-do object and take two of the attributes there, title and complete, and create basically new type from it. So it will be like new type that will have title and completed. But both of them right now are mandatory. That's why we have partial here, which will make optional for these two properties. So it's a very useful thing from TypeScript, and for our purposes right now, elegant way of writing it. Now we can, again, we will create our URL, but this time we need to provide ID at the end of the address. And we will use put method here, like that. And close the brackets. And we can continue. Last thing we'll do, we just create delete method, which will accept ID string. Again, create URL address and call delete method from HTTP like that. And basically this is our service, our API service. We can use it now in our to-do store. So let's do it. So we are back into our to-do store, and we will now update this file. We want to be able to, for example, have information about loading. In this video we will not create any special loaders, but we need to be we want to have at least information about that in our store, also about if some error happened. And of course we need to update our initial state. We will have loading false and error null. And now we will proceed to update our methods. Now we need to refactor this part with methods, because it is now functioning as one big return because of these brackets. but we want to be able to inject our to-do service, to-do API service, and to add some additional logic. So we need to delete this bracket and basically use a return now here and close it here like that. So now it's okay, and we can inject our to-do API like that, and we can now use our service. Very simple. So let's do it. And now we can continue, and we will create new method here for fetching our to-dos, which we will call every time application reloads. So let's create new method, and we will of course need to first update our state, and we will set loading to be true and error to be null, and then we will put everything into try catch block. Inside of it we need to get filter, and that filter will be used to get values from our list method. Remember, it returns stream, so we need to use first value from function from NGRX. Now we can patch our state, but this should be to-do's data. Oh, why is it screaming? I think I know, because we have decided to return to-do array, but our backend actually have a different return. It returns more. So we need to create to-do response like that, which will have data, what we needed, and total as a number of how many of items are there. And we need to update this to return to-do response, and again this. Like that. Now we can go back and refactor it, and it should be like that. And we can write catch state. Of course this needs to be async, because we are using await. It needs to be wrapped in the async block like that. So if error comes, we will just update our state with error message. And yeah, so we have fetch to-dos. We will use it later. And now we can update add to-do. Right now we are going to update add to-do. So how we will do it? We will basically leave it, this part, as it is now, because we want our application to be really responsive. So when user adds new item, he will see it immediately. We just need to extrapolate our random ID, because we will use it later after we will really save it on backend to track our item in our array and update it a bit. So we need to now put everything into try catch block, and we will call our API. We will save it in a new const. We will do it like that. Again, we used first value from. We call our API service, create method, and after that, when we have our return, of course we need to put async here. Again, we can patch our data, because we already put our data there before. We need to now find it and update it a bit. So we will use map function. We will find our ID and we will just update it like that. So what we are doing, we first saved our new to-do item in our state, and then we called backend. Backend returned the new state. It will have basically the same data, but we need to be sure that everything is as it is on backend. So we will just update it here like in our state. So we are making sure. Again, now we need to be able to react if something doesn't go well. How we will do it? We will use sketch, and in the case of error happens, we need to do few things. First, we will save error, we will set loading to be false, and we need to also update our to-dos and remove basically what we have added there because it didn't really save on the backend. So this is basically how it works for our add to do, and we can move again to other methods. Now we will update our remove to do method. We need to first create special variable where we will have saved the item we want to delete. So of course we should put simple condition here. If to do doesn't exist, we will just return and nothing happens. Now we can leave it like that, basically as it is. And in the try catch block, we will first call our API service and delete method, where it will call our backend and delete it. And now comes important part. If some error happens, we need to be able to restore what we have deleted. So basically we need to call patch state again, and instead of and set to-dos to be as it was before basically. So for that we will update it with this code. We will take to-dos as they were, and we will save there our to-do that we have saved here. So everything will be okay. Of course we need to also save our error message, and this should be async. And now let's move on. So last thing we want to change is our effect. So basically it works right now that anytime our store to-dos state changes, this is called and it saves our data into local storage. Well, we don't need to save it into local storage now. What we want instead is anytime our filter is changed, we want to get new data from backend. So basically we need to create a variable here that will take filter from our state. Remember, this is signal, and effect will be called anytime this signal in our state will change. And we want exactly that, and we will just update our state. We want error to be null because in some cases there could be error, but things on backend could change. So we want to update our error state, and we will call fetch to-dos. So we will load new data, and we can examine what we did. We have updated our methods, so they are using our to-dos API service, and I think it should be working now. We can test it. As you can see, our application is not working exactly as it's supposed to be. So we can look into console and see where the problem is. And there it is, no provider found for HTTP client. And I think I know what it means. We have used HTTP client here when we call our backend. But I think we have forgot in our Bootstrap application in main.ts, where we have app config, we have forgotten here to provide it. We need to provide it for our application or the inject will not work. So when we save it right now, it works. And we can try adding new item now. And we can look in network what happened. And we have called our backend and it looks like it's working now. It returns data for us. We can try delete it. Oh, it doesn't work. Message to do not found. Okay, so we are calling it, but it cannot find it by ID. We can look into our code and debug it here. So we use this ID and we can look. Okay. Oh, I know where is the problem. It is in our to-do store. When we go there, when we create our new item, we are generating random ID, which is temporal ID, which we update our state. But our backend generates different ID, and we are here making mistake. We want to update our to-dos with the one that was created on backend. There will be just difference in ID. But we are comparing it to already created ID on our backend and not with our random ID. So of course it cannot find it and update it, and therefore we have the wrong ID. When we save it right now and go back, it should work. I can now try to add again and delete it, and it works. Add, check. Let's see. We can see different type of calls right now. We have called that it is checked, and it works. When we press refresh, okay, there is still one problem. As you can see, it is still loading our data from local storage. We forgot to also delete our function for loading. We don't need it right now. And it is used right here when we create our initial state. I think we can leave it right like that. So yeah, I think now it will work exactly as it's supposed to. So we can add, we can delete, and as you can see, it calls our backend. There are no errors anymore, and our application is updated. So we can summarize what we have done. We don't need this now anymore too. We have created our Todo API service where we have created our methods that are calling our backend. And we have injected this Todo API into our to-do store, NGRX signal store, and we are now using a real backend. We are not just using our local storage, although we can combine these two, but for the purpose of this video, it's more simple to do it like that. Well, of course, we have created also here things that we didn't implement now. We can create loader, for example. We can create error page or something like that. But this was just simple example how you can use API, call your backend from your NGRX signal store. It's quite simple and it works fine, and that's about it. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Subscribe to my channel if you are new here for future videos about programming, about code, and see you next time.